Welcome back, everybody. We're back with another critique of your designs. This one's going to be fun too, because we're always looking for the sketches that have the most potential to be improved. By the way, guys, if you're going to do a sketch, you're going to tell me that this is a design that you'd like to be critiqued, please do include a minimal amount of information telling me how old you are and sometimes where you're from. Where you're from helps me to understand your sort of cultural approach, your viewpoint. You know, if you're an American designer, you're going to have a different viewpoint as if you're from Japan, whatever. So let me know. Also, your age will help me to judge the level of your sketching technique. So the first one today is from Casper Frost. You've designed a bread van for 2020. Now, if you don't know about Ferraris, you're probably wondering what the heck a bread van is. It's a vehicle that was designed by Ferrari, termed the bread van, because it had that feeling that it could be a bread van, but it was just the dramatic proportions of the vehicle cut off at the rear for aerodynamic purposes that made it look so dramatic. Very distinctive, very fascinating car to look at. And Casper has been courageous enough to submit a design of what a 2020 Ferrari would look like. Rule number one, do not design current vehicles, design futuristic vehicles. Designers are paid the big bucks to imagine cars that could be out in 5 to 10 years. So you have to wire your brain in that way that you're looking at something that looks super fresh. So instead of designing a car for 2020, design a car for 2035. Your vehicle, not that it looks old, but it looks current. And that is not a good way for a designer to design. We always have to stretch the limits, make things that are basically impossible today that could eventually be produced in the future. So, okay, so in terms of what you've designed here, your sketch technique, you put a lot of effort. I can see that. You have not put any effort into the wheels. Why? Because there are no wheels on your design. Try to put wheels on the next time. Obviously, also, it's a good way to design to get the feeling for correct perspective. So you've got a bit of a proportion problem here. First of all, your car is very narrow here. You have to put in a center line. Believe me, here, Casper, when you put a center line in, say that's your bonnet, your hood, you're gonna put in, if that's the edge of it, the fender, and this is the other one. Remember that perspective means that this distance from this fender to the middle line is gonna be a little bit longer. Give a little bit of an offset. But then when you get to the base of the windscreen, you go up, you've got a serious problem here with your windscreen. You need to bring it probably out about that much, I'd say, which means your whole car now is going to become a lot wider than what you've shown here. So bring the car out. It's not a crime. It's probably actually better to make a car wider than it actually is. So from a sketching perspective, your artistic license, push the limits a little bit on the width of the car. That always makes it look better. Your problem here is that your perspective lines are all screwed up in the sense that they're not all going to the same vanishing point. So again, perspective is one of the first things you have to learn when you start sketching. Don't start sketching a car until you know the rules of perspective. Your front is a little bit out of whack. That fender's longer than this fender. So you have to start working to those lines. So yeah. So in that sense, Casper, if you start getting the perspective right, the whole drawing will just roll after that. So again, when I say design for the future, fat pillars are not something we're going to be seeing in the future. We're going to find much stronger materials that can do the job and won't be as heavy, as bulky. So push the limits with your pillars, get them thin. You know, I've always spoken about thinner pillars being the direction we should be heading. And that's simply because from a ergonomic point of view, when you're inside the vehicle, you don't want these sight lines blocking your view. So A pillars especially, narrow them up, make the job difficult for the engineer. He'll tell you you're crazy, but you know, good engineers can develop just about anything. Okay, your headlights, your intakes here, they're a bit, seen them, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. You know, we've seen this kind of graphic done before on Ferraris. It's way back to the SPs in the early 60s, even up to the, you know, the 430. So this intake here, I guess you do have a front engine. Come on, Casper, you can do better than that. It's just a hole in the front of the hood. the bonnet. Not that it's a crutch or anything like that to rely on the past history of Ferrari, but do try to find new things, new ways of interpreting elements of design that will bring Ferrari into the future. So thanks, Casper. Again, nothing personal. I don't know you, but I'm just trying to help you, man. Trying to get you to think a little bit more forward, advanced thinking. Remember, designers, like I said, are always doing something that drives the engineers nuts. Push the limits of things that are structurally the way they are today. That's always a good way. New technology for headlights, new technology for air intakes and air vents. Proportions are great because you can say it's a bread van and it's very unique, but push, push, push. Next one is going to be from Sheikh Samana. No info. So you might not want to put too much info down on here. Sorry to say that, but this really is a... you're serious, right, Sheikh? Okay, I know I've always said that you should sketch. You should not worry about the lines you're putting on the page, and you should accent the strong lines, the ones that you want. But I think, Sheikh, you've accented the wrong ones. And I don't want to be funny and not trying to be humorous here. This needs a lot of work. You probably are very passionate about car design, otherwise you wouldn't submit something like this. And you're trying your best, but again, there's always room for improvement. And let me try to give you a few tips that can bring this up a couple notches. The door cut line is very interesting. It's almost a perfect ellipse. Actually, you probably used ellipse guide on your door shot line. That's very interesting. Nice shape, beautiful ellipse. Cool, never seen that, but that's interesting. I like that. Now let's get on with the design and your design technique, Sheikh, because I don't know, again, if you're a young designer or an older designer or what kind of education you've had. There are a couple things, first of all, that are a big problem here. The size of your wheels. Now, if you're designing a car for Rocket League, Sheikh, you've done a great job because it really looks like it belongs there. On the other hand, if you want this car on the road, you're going to have to tone it back a little bit. Those tires are way oversized. They're extending out and over the body, and you don't do that. You can't do that. So you have to keep the wheels covered, which means either reducing the height of your wheels, getting them within the fender so you have some space covering the actual top of the wheels, which means your bonnet center line, your hood center line can fall to where it's at. You know, you have it fairly low in terms of the relationship with the wheel size. Yet the fender has to go over the wheels. So make sure you get a fender that leads up and over the wheel and leaves enough what we call jounce, up and down movement of the tire. When you're at full lock and you've hit a bump, you don't want that tire to hit the fender. So you need a certain amount of clearance and coverage there. So get that fender up and over the tire. You got an interesting windscreen, very low roof, and a flowing back, which is a nice look. It's kind of like, kind of reminds me of a VW Scirocco if you look at those vehicles, a little bit like that. You got this going on with your air outlet on the side here. It's kind of in contrast with the rest of the lines on your vehicle. When you're designing a car, again and again I say it, make it speak one language. You've got so many different elements of design combined that you're getting something like a minestrone soup. A lot of different elements coming into it, and you don't really know what taste it is. You've got now something flowing like that, which is nice. And so I would do that same theme with your air extractor below the door here. You want something that basically flows, you know? So at the moment it kind of looks like a hockey stick or L shape, but get some flow going on in there. Same with, I mean, your door, as I said, it's a perfect ellipse. You haven't fooled me, but that's nice, I guess. If it can open, it's great. I used to complain about my brother when he signed his name. It always looked like a chicken scratch, you know, in the sand. It was just scratch, scratch, scratch. You've got a lot of that going on. You don't need to be that busy with all your lines, you know. When I say a line should be left on there to show that you're thinking, this is more like confusion. It's more than just thinking. It's like adding lines for line's sake, and that is not a good thing. You just need a few. Maybe it took you a long time to get to this shape, and so you left a lot of the lines on there. If that's the process, then as you get better as a young designer, you will start to use less lines. In the case, Shike, that you're trying to show the aero flow across the car, the flow lines as we call them, then pick out a few. For example, if you're going to show the wind going over the car, so draw the wind. And it could almost start to look like a Coca-Cola graphic, because it gets, for example, it can start out thick or thin. Then as it comes across here, it gets thin, for example, then gets thicker again. You just need maybe about 3 of these type of lines that will illustrate the flow of the wind. So obviously as you get closer to the car, they're going to get curvier to match the silhouette of the car. As you get away from the surface of the car, they're going to be flatter because they're less affected by the shape of the car. In that sense, interesting shape, novel shape here, Shike. It's interesting. It could be futuristic if you took it a couple steps further, but I think overall what it suffers from is overthinking the design, overdrawing the design. Calm it down again. Good designs look very simple, very clean. The more lines, the busier it's going to look, and the less clear the message is. We want clarity and purity of design. So push in that direction and you will have a much nicer sketch that will take it to the next level. Thanks. Moving on to the last submission. This one is from Lee Webb. Now, what I'm looking at from Lee is what I would interpret as a final design here, because it's rendered up nicely. It looks like a real car, or potentially could be a real car. A few things are wrong with it, and I'll get into those right away, but my first impression is basically a new direction for cars. Interesting to say that it does look like something that could be on GTA, sort of a blend of familiar cars, blended together to create a new design, trying to be harmonious. I see the flow that he's tried to achieve. There's a simplicity to your design, Lee, that is admirable. If I look at it from the front, not to criticize it, but just to say it looks very VW-ish, modern VW-ish, and as it flows towards the back, you're starting to get in a feeling of a little bit Ferrari-esque, a little bit Lambo-esque, a little bit Bugatti-esque. So starting with the front, you got basically a very clean design. I said very Beetle-esque. You can tell by the sections as you have them rendered here. They're very bulbous in a certain way. Not bad. I mean, you have a massive grille underneath here, at least an air intake, which, again, if it's going to be an electric or hybrid, do you need a mouth that big? Probably not. In terms of design recommendations, close off the front as much as possible. Get much better aero when you close off holes like that. And you can fill it up basically with a surface that maybe has, I don't know, obviously don't forget your registration plate, your license plate. You need that all the time. And we have to be careful with the new generation of cars that are electric, that we don't make the car face less. So the more elements we take off the front of the car, the less character it's going to have, which means that you're going to have to place a lot more emphasis on things that we do need, like illumination. So when you go to a headlight like this, and like that small one there, these are elements that are almost bland. They were characterful when they first came out, but they've been done, repeated so many times after the introduction of sort of what we call elliptical or roundish headlights, that now it's indistinguishable which brand is running them. So find a headlight that is uniquely its own. Look for new technology that allows you to do a front-end graphic. There's a little bit more modern than what you have going on here. Again, moving back, you have a strange line here that's totally out of perspective. I don't know how that happened, but you need your header line to be more in perspective, more correct. You have it dipping down quite a bit in that area there, which means it's lopsided, and you don't want that. You have very, very fat A-pillar. That is old. Nobody wants fat A-pillars. You want the thinnest possible A-pillars that you can manage. So make them, again, impossible. You know, narrow them down to 25 mil if you have to. Just do something that makes that sight line as unobtrusive as possible. You want as much vision forward, unobstructed vision forward as possible. As you move back, okay, you got your typical header and your typical glass roof, which is good. Visibility, we like light inside the cabin that you can either toned down, so you reduce the amount of light coming in, or you can increase it or whatever, but it's nice to have glass roofs. The one thing I would say here that I know is probably not your fault, but the way it's been rendered is confusing for somebody who's not a professional designer to understand. This white blob, insignificant as it may appear, is totally confusing, and from a design point of view, you would never do that. And why? Because I don't know what to think of it. I think it's just a blob of reflection that landed on the glass. But from a communication, which is what the sketch is all about, communicating ideas. This is like speaking Chinese to me, or some language I don't understand. Why the heck do you have a white blob there? If it's a reflection, great, but get rid of it, move it somewhere else. You have it right behind your mirror, and it sort of adds to the confusion of the sketch, where it could be so nice if I didn't see that, but having seen it, not knowing what it is, it's disturbing. So get rid of that. As we move back, you've got a beautiful shoulder line going on here. I like that very much. It gives strength to the cabin, sitting on a planted body. It gives width to the vehicle. When you look at it from behind, the car looks extremely stable on its wheels. Fantastic. You got a very nice entry line, surface development going on through here. That's very well done. Towards the back, I don't know too much what's going on, but you have a problem here. Just before you come to the rear wheel, I can see it by the way it's highlighted or the way it's shaded. You have a very funny surface angle going on there. Look at that on your 3D, and you'll see that it doesn't actually work very well there. It should just be a nice, smooth surface, the way the rest of the body works. As you come to the rear, not too clear what's going on. I would have loved to see a rear view image of this car. If you're able to develop a car to this level in 3D, it shouldn't be much more work to develop a view that shows it from a rear 3/4, communicates a lot more of what's going on. And from the side, this is fine. It works from a 3D, from a perspective point of view. One small detail, I probably would have flowed in that belt line of the window into the actual baseline of the windscreen, so you don't have that step that you have at the moment. So that would help quite a bit to get a nice flow. The rest of the car looks pretty futuristic. Your door shut lines are interesting. Maybe on the other side, if you want to go one stage further, show the door on the opposite side, what it would look like if it was actually open, and you get a feeling if the door opens in a certain way or not, how dramatic it can look. The critical message for today is communication of your design to somebody who probably doesn't understand design as well as you, but that he gets a full, complete, truthful interpretation of the design. So you want to make it easy for somebody who's looking at your design to understand it, not to have to think too much or figure something out or ask you too many questions. Those points, if you take them into account, will definitely improve this design. So again, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Lee, good job. So thank you to all of you who submitted designs. We have a lot more to come, a lot of sketches to review, a lot of lessons to be learned. I enjoy doing these, and I look forward to your comments below on what you suggest in terms of critiques, but we'll try to raise the level in each episode, and I'll look forward to seeing you again in the next episode.